Now, I'm sorry to rapidly transition from an actual king to just not a king, a peon, Ben Shabibo. Ben Shabibo has finally released a cut of what his take is on the Trump raid. Let's take
Unfortunately, in my absence, it seems as though things have gotten a lot worse here, largely because of the...
It's like all these motherfuckers took vacation right as Trump got... All these motherfuckers took vacation right as Trump got, like, raided.
Weaponization of the FBI and DOJ. And it's hard for me at this point to read what is going on with the FBI and DOJ and see it as anything other than weaponization. The reason I say this is because they've now released the search warrant on Donald Trump's place of residence at Mar-a-Lago. They've released some of the underlying legal materials. Merrick Garland has then emerged to explain in front of the cameras that he, in fact, ordered the code red. It was he who signed off on this FBI search on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago property. And here is the problem. We still don't know what exactly they are looking for. And we're learning every day about more stuff that they took from Donald Trump. Here's the thing. If you are going to search the residence of the former president of the United States and the probable next nominee for the opposing political party, you'd best have an incredibly clear and convincing case as to why you are doing so. You can't just do so as a deep-sea fishing expedition. And that's what this appears to be. Now, you might be able to find something with a fishing expedition. What you find better be absolutely outsized. You cannot go on a deep-sea fishing expedition here and come up with a minnow and then say, it was all justified because we came up with this minnow right here. You see this tiny little fish? We came up with this. Sure, we weaponized the DOJ and the FBI.
What are you talking about, dude? You can't, you literally, first of all, you can do that. Like, what? What do you mean? Like, you can't consider this a fishing expedition if, like, one of the fucking crimes fits the bill. Okay, that's number one, which it does. Ben Shapiro is not just personally talking about this immediately after it happened. He has the knowledge of what we all know, the events that took place. You can't just say, oh, man, it's still a fucking fishing expedition at this stage. Except Republicans would literally say everything's a little minnow if they find anything anyway, even if it's a really big deal. But also, okay, this didn't even need to happen. It could have been completely avoided if Trump had cooperated with the authorities.
You had to go after our political opponents, and what we came up with was this small fish. No, you're going to have to come up with Moby Dick here. You're going to have to come up with an actual white whale spouting oil. I mean, that is really what you're going to have to come up with here, and that is not in evidence so far. Every other minute, it seems, we are learning that they took something else from Mar-a-Lago. According to the UK Daily Mail, the Justice Department has hit back at Donald Trump's claim the FBI stole his passports during the raid on his Mar-a-Lago mansion. An insider told CBS the agency does not have the documents, but added whatever was seized that was not on the warrant will in fact be returned. It comes after the former president on Monday claimed his passports were taken, which would mean that he could not leave the country. And this led to all sorts of speculation. Of course, on the left, the way that this works is that the minute you find out what sort of documents they seize, then they go, oh, well, obviously he's guilty. If they took his passports...
Bro, you do this too. You were just on vacation, so you couldn't do this. Except you're literally doing something even worse than the speculation. You already have knowledge of what some of the documents are at least classified as. You know that, like, at least some of them are literally of the highest security clearance. And yet you're still saying, it's a minnow, it's a minnow, it's a fishing expedition. It's like, bro, what do you mean? Like, dude... These guys love crafting a narrative by just completely avoiding, like, fundamentally important parts of the events that took place. It's so crazy. It's just like, yeah, it's really unacceptable that they did this. It's like, well, you know, they do have a legal reasoning for it. You know, they do have a legal basis for behaving this way. And also, it's kind of on Trump.
It means they don't want him to flee. Donald Trump is a flight risk from the United States. Yeah, sure. Or they seized secret, classified documents. Probably it was the nuclear launch codes, and he was about to hand them over to the Russians or to the Saudis because, you know, Jared Kushner has some sort of money deal with the Saudis. The speculation on the left is always and forever that whatever people are searching for on Donald Trump, they must have something. They must have...
Wait, what? Like, but that is what happened. What do you mean? But Jared Kushner did get $2 billion from the Saudi government. They invested They got a $2 billion investment from the Kingdom's Sovereign Wealth Fund for his newly formed private equity firm. Bro, these motherfuckers cry about Hunter Biden's laptop. Hunter Biden never got $2 billion. You know what I mean? He got like fucking diamonds and shit. Why are you saying supposedly $2 billion? Like, what is that, a little amount of money? If $2 billion is not that big of a deal, what are we talking about Chinese diamonds that fucking, why are we even ever considering Chinese diamonds that Hunter Biden may or may not have gotten? Or the fucking Burisma deal. You know what I mean? That's pennies, dog. What the fuck?
Have something. And here's the thing. If you're a rational human being and you watch the FBI and DOJ go after Donald Trump while he was president for 4 years over Russiagate, you start to wonder if they really do have something. Or is it just true that everyone is incompetent all the time? And so the combination of incompetence and gradual malevolence on the part of some people in the FBI and DOJ has some really dire consequences. As I said when this news first broke, in order for you to raid, and you know, you can say it's a raid, you can say it's search, it doesn't really matter. In order to search the residence of the former president of the United States and current leader of the opposition to the president of the United States, in order to search his residence, you have to have high institutional trust in the so-called nonpartisan aspects of the American government. You have to trust that the FBI actually is not politicized. You have to trust the DOJ is not politicized. But it's hard to think of a time in modern American history when there's been less trust in these institutions. And so what you are doing is you are staking the possibility of faith in the institutions on a claim that appears to be slim as a reed. And
Dude, I love this. This is like liberal posturing, by the way. This undermines the credibility of our institutions. Like, fuck you. No one cares. Shut the fuck up, bitch. If you truly cared about it, you wouldn't be working overtime in further undermining the credibility of these institutions, which I don't give a shit about anyway. But like, you're simultaneously lying to further undermine and erode trust within the FBI by cutting this fucking video. Like, what do you mean? You're like, oh man, it's just like, how dare they do this? They're undermining the institutions. Like, well, you know, you're fucking selling a lie to your audience to do that. So perhaps that's one reason why trust has been eroded in our institutions.
I say this because I've now looked at the search warrant and it cites 3 separate parts of the United States legal code. It cites 18 U.S. Code 793. That's the Espionage Act, talking about the gathering, transmitting, or losing of defense information. And particularly, it is talking about important classified information. It cites also U.S. Code 18, Section 2071, concealment, removal, or mutilation generally of materials. And it cites also 18 U.S. Code 1519.
By the way, when you show stuff like this, you're just showing that Ben is successful and Fox News is successful and Trump is successful in propagandizing something that would otherwise cause him to, you know, be jailed, or otherwise cause him to, in a normal country, cause people to be skeptical of him. Okay? So the ground is set for people, no matter what, to maintain their position that Trump is great and he should win. And it doesn't matter if the FBI is investigating him or not. That's not going to change. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, this really galvanizes support. Of course it galvanizes support. Everything will galvanize support. When Trump is mentioned in the media, it gets people hyped up. It gets people going. They love him. No matter what he does, like, you're not going to be able to change that reality. I mean, the past 5-6 years should be a perfect example of that. So I feel like this is like, what's the alternative here? Are you supposed to dance around? Are you supposed to dance around Donald Trump because you know that, like, any action you take against them, any action you take against him is going to be propagandized and will probably end up creating more support for him? Yeah. I mean, yeah, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, he said, and not lose votes.
Smart. And you know what else? My people are so smart. And you know what else they say about my people? The polls. They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible. No, they say, Trump, we love you too, man. Trump's voters are by far, you know, I'm at 68, 69%. I'm at 90% total.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter. He could literally hand deliver a nuke to Mohammed bin Salman and his supporters would be like, no, king, he deserves it. Mohammed bin Salman, by extension of being around Donald Trump, is also my king now.
which is about the destruction,
Mohammed bin Salman, more like Mohammed bin solving the problem. You know what I mean?
alteration, or falsification of
The problem is children in Yemen.
records in federal investigations and bankruptcy. So we were originally
They'd
told
be like, who cares about New York? Nuke it. You know what I mean? Who cares? There's enough. There's a lot of bi-coastal elitists living there. You know what I mean? Like, that's... Trump supporters would be like, yeah, no, it's fine that a dirty bomb was blown up in the middle of New York. They were all Democrats. There was a Democrat-run city, so it was their fault.
that the search on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago property was about classified documents he still had in his possession. And this raised a bunch of questions. It raised question number one. Were these actually classified documents? Because the president has plenary power to declassify documents while he is still in office. So if the day before he took all of this stuff to his residence, he said, just out loud, this stuff is now declassified. It is totally unclear, legally speaking, whether he has to go through any sort of procedure to declassify. Because again,
No, that's not true. That's literally not true. That is completely false. No, there is, especially when it comes to like nuclear documents, there's a separate process on top of that. There's a process for declassification, and he just straight up made that up. He's like, technically, it's unclear whether these documents are declassified or not because Donald Trump might have declassified them. He says he did. It's like, no, but he didn't. Like, that's not how that works. And even if that was how it worked, do you think Ben Shapiro would feel the same way if it was a Democratic president that declassified nuclear details, nuclear information that is the highest security? Do you think Ben Shapiro would sit idly by and be like, oh yeah, well that's okay. A president could technically do that. Like, no, of course he wouldn't fucking feel that way.
power to declassify lies in the president of the United States. And there's no actual procedure for declassification. It doesn't say by statute or under the Constitution that he has to sign some sort of form saying this stuff is declassified. He can basically just do a Michael Scott, perhaps, walk into the middle of the office, say, I hereby declare bankruptcy. I declare that this is declassified. And now all of it is declassified. So he has now said, by the way,
some of that information doesn't even fucking matter if he declassified it or not. Like, if the government wants to retrieve it, they can. So even if he fucking declassified it, it still doesn't matter. Why is Ben not talking about that? Well, I know why he's not talking about that, because that would undermine the propaganda, the propagandized point he's trying to fucking make.
In my administration.
Yeah, we'll do LegalEagle's video on all the crimes.
that this is what he did. And Donald Trump, as sort of a defense mechanism here, he has said that this is precisely what he did. Apparently, a statement was put out to John Solomon, a reporter at Just the News, in which Donald Trump says this, quote, as we can all relate to, everyone ends up having to bring home their work from time to time. American presidents are no different. President Trump, in order to prepare the work the next day, often took documents, including classified documents, to the residence. He had a standing order that documents removed from the Oval Office and taken.
So you're conceding that they can declare it declassified? No, I'm not. I'm not even conceding on that. That's bullshit. The idea that you could just like declassify it in your mind is so fucking stupid. No, of course you can't do that. That is a made up point. And it literally started with the Heritage Foundation. I showed you. Okay. When this information first came out, people were asking what the declassification process worked. And I made a joke about like, well, what if he just said it in his mind? You know what I mean? What if that could be a fucking way that they would try to defend it? Like, how stupid would that be? And then literally 3 hours later, there was a Heritage Foundation guy who wrote that as a legitimate fucking reason. Like, he said, there's an ongoing robust debate in the legal field about whether a president could declassify materials in his mind without telling any other person. And I thought that was a joke at first, but no, they literally were going with that. And now that talking point has been disseminated through all of the propaganda machine, through the entire fucking propaganda machine. And now you got motherfuckers like Ben Shapiro repeating it like as if it's a fact. They moved on from like the robust legal debate, which was never a robust legal debate, by the way. That's not a real thing. That did not fucking happen. What? Here's a fun thing. I love Trump's legal team, dude. The Heritage Foundation, Stimson has a different view. I love Republicans so much because this is where they thrive, right? Like, they've already been dominating in the talking point game for too long. So now they have to pop off, right? This is a moment where they have to act swiftly. So what kind of legal defense have they brought up? If any president decides to declassify a document, it doesn't tell anybody, but he has made the decision to declassify something, then that document is declassified, Stimson said. He added that there's a rich debate about whether or not a document is declassified if a president has decided, but not communicated it outside of his own head. Whoa! He just said a president can think about declassifying and declassify a document without telling any other motherfucker, and then it doesn't matter. Stop playing with me, Heritage Foundation. Let's fucking go. New talking point just dropped. Here's a that's
Fun
crazy.
thing.
Like, that's just insanity that they went from there's a robust legal debate, which when there was none, to that's actually what people believe. That's where it went down from the Heritage Foundation, where the talking point was created and disseminated through the mouths of people like Ben Shapiro. Okay? And now people are just unironically turning around and going, yeah, that's the truth. That's how it works. He could have done that.
To the residents were deemed to be declassified the moment he removed them. The power to classify and declassify documents rests solely with the President of the United States. The idea that some paper-pushing bureaucrat with classification authority delegated by the President needs to approve the declassification is absurd. So the claim here is no one can tell the President that stuff is actually still classified if he declares it declassified. Maybe he's doing this post hoc. Maybe he didn't actually say at the time it's declassified. But it's going to be very hard to prove that in a court of law.
Oh my God, he's saying you can even do it post hoc. That is unimaginable. Like, he's saying even if he's cheating and even if he's claiming that he's doing it post hoc, that doesn't matter because it'll be really hard to prove in a court. Okay, so what, motherfucker? First of all, there is no legal debate here. Okay, you just made that up. Dude, that's I don't know what to say. It's like it's like you're dealing with children. Like, it's the most childish defense you could launch. And because everyone is so fucking stupid, it works.
Law. And again, when it comes to
5,000,
classification and declassification, generally speaking, these are not.
No, he's saying even if he did it afterwards, like even if he decided to do it afterwards, there's no way to prove it in a court of law that he didn't do it in his mind when he was president. So he's saying, like, Trump could technically do it, okay? If Trump can do it without informing anyone, he could just claim he did it while he was in office, and no one would be able to undermine that. That, of course, is insane. It's basically just saying, like, a president, once you're president once, you're literally forever king. You're forever God king. It's not even a dude. It is so fucking stupid. It's not even an argument. I don't know how to approach it other than, like, holy shit. I mean, yeah, President Bill Clinton has now declared all of Hillary's emails declassified. This argument is totally not brain dead. Like, come on, dude. Yeah, Bill Clinton actually declassified all of Hillary Clinton's emails in perpetuity, so it doesn't matter. Nice, because there are no procedures done for declassified docs. Of course there are. That's why it's ridiculous. The argument hinges on there being no procedure for it. This, of course, makes it additionally funnier because they were also claiming that the FBI planted documents. Originally, they were like, well, what if the FBI planted documents? So what's up? Did he fucking declassify those documents in his head too? You know, oh, the FBI planted those documents, which I also declassified in my head because I knew that the FBI would probably plant those documents there. So, no, boo-boo. You can't get me. Like a child. Literally like a child. But of course, because we have, like, emotionally and mentally stunted human beings in this fucking country as a consequence of deliberately undermining public education over the course of a fucking century, that people are like, yeah, that makes sense to me. I like Donald Trump. He's on. I'm a vibes-based voter. I like him. He makes the libs pissed off. So if he wants to declassify documents, I don't give a fuck. He should be able to have the nuclear launch codes and give it to whoever the fuck he pleases.
Statutes like the Espionage Act that have significant criminal penalties attached. They've largely been used with regard, well, the Espionage Act does. Rather, when you talk about, for example, the presidential archives, anything having to do with the National Archives and the taking home of materials that belong in the National Archives, that's not stuff that really has criminal penalties attached. The Espionage Act does, but the Espionage Act also suggests that you have to have some level of intent, generally speaking, or gross negligence in order to be charged under the Espionage Act, which is exactly why Hillary Clinton was not. And so what exactly is the DOJ and the FBI doing here?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is gross negligence, I think. Right? Wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you say refusing to respond to a subpoena, or responding to a subpoena and then lying about some of the additional documents that you still kept after the government asked to retrieve them? Wouldn't you say that that's like incredibly fucking stupid? That it definitely is grossly negligent, I think. But technically, well, I'm Ben Shapiro, I've decided that the president cannot be neglectful because everything the president does is devoid of neglect. It's not gross. It might be negligent, but it's not grossly negligent because Trump is incapable of being gross, which is precisely why I believe that Donald Trump is innocent. He's infallible.
This is the major question. So Andy McCarthy over at National Review, he has a good breakdown. And here's what he says.
By the way, speaking of like vibes-based commentary, there is no better example, okay? There is no better example of like how little people care about the actual substance of the conversations and more so just care about vibes overall than people listening to Ben Shapiro as the facts over feelings guy, okay? Because like everything in this commentary is completely devoid of facts. Either he's lying by omission when he leaves out key details, or he's just straight up lying and bringing up ridiculous legal solutions that are not legal, okay, that have never existed. And people still think he's like a brilliant fucking nerd. Why? Because he looks like a nerd and he talks like a nerd. He talks fast and he has this like Weasley fucking voice. So people assume that he's on their side and therefore like everything he has to say. They're like, oh, this is great.
As he says, we can see the investigation is far broader than just the mishandling of classified information. Remember, this was the original case. The original case was he has classified information at his residence. And
part of the reason why I just want like anything to come out of this is because like it will really anger these motherfuckers, okay? I want it so bad. I want it for pure spite-based reasons, okay? I have no interest in like morality. I have no interest in justice in this circumstance. Trump has done a bunch of fucked up things when he was in office, okay? Awful white nativist immigration policies, really fucking ramping up white supremacist talking points, like openly stating them from the bully pulpit, you know, all this awfulness, right? But I'm a petty bitch. At this point, like, I don't even have a moral slant on this, you know? I don't even care. I just want him to fucking suffer. And I want more importantly than Trump, because I do still, you know, love Trump because I think he's a great poster. Even if he goes to jail, he should be allowed to post from jail. That would be fucking sick. I want these Republican shitheads to get so mad. I want them to get even more mad because it's just great. I like that. It just gives me happiness. That's it.
And as I say, this raises a number of questions. Number one, the president of the United States can declassify.
Fishing my life, stupid lib. I am not a liberal, my friend. I will make concessions to you right now. Throw some Democrats in jail too, okay? Throw some fucking Democrats in jail too. Oof, all the better. Throw a couple Democrats in jail. Throw Donald Trump in jail. Jim Jordan, Kevin McCarthy. You know what I mean? Joe Manchin, Joe Brandon. Throw Brandon in jail. Manchin, Sinema, Nancy Pelosi. Oof. So good.
Number two, if this classified information was so all-fired important, why are they going to get it by claiming that the National Archives is missing it using the non-criminal statute? And then they release the search warrant. It says, oh, no, it's not just the National Archives stuff. It's also the Espionage Act stuff.
Wait, what do you mean? Yeah, of course they didn't want to, because they didn't want to rock the boat, dumbass. That's the main reason. They didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to cause fucking chaos. Trump was the only person who lit the fire to make this even more chaotic. Okay? That's it. That's the reason. That's the main reason. They didn't want to rock the boat because the FBI doesn't want to fucking prosecute a wealthy, powerful person. Get the fuck out of here. That's not what they do. That's exactly the opposite of what they do. That's the point. That's the reason.
It's also these other aspects of American law. But what this really looks like in the end, as Andy McCarthy explains, is grab every paper you can find at Mar-a-Lago because maybe we'll come up with something. Here's what Andy McCarthy says. He says, while the Espionage Act offense relates to defense secrets, the other two offenses are not limited to classified information. Section 2071 relates to the removal or concealment of any government record, not just classified information. Section 1519 applies to any item at all. It need not be a government record, for the point is to protect government investigations, not government property. And then it looks like the search warrant prioritizes classified information crimes, but less so than it first appears. One of the subsections of the attachment to the search warrant authorizes agents to seize documents marked classified, but the license is much, much broader. The warrant allows seizures of not only containers in which classified documents are found, along with their other contents, even if they're not classified, but
I love him like glancing over the Espionage Act proportion of this to like, of course, hyper focus on the sides of it that sides of the conversation that are not as irrelevant and wouldn't clear the bar of like a retrieval of said documents with like FBI agents.
Also of other containers found proximate to the first containers, again, regardless of whether the contents are classified. So if the agents found a box and inside that box there was a low-level classified document and that was stored next to 10 other containers of non-classified documents, the warrant would allow the FBI to simply grab all of those things. And the warrant also permits the seizure of communications in any form regarding classified information. So, in other words, if I write a note and I make reference to classified information, but don't actually state the specified classified information, that could also have been grabbed by the FBI.
A box marked TSSCI being found takes Ben's entire argument behind a shed and extrajudicially executes it. Yes. That's it. That's all you need. Like, it doesn't matter if they took his fucking passports on accident and then immediately informed him that they took his passports and we're going to give it back. Okay? And that's the first time that Trump even recognized that his passports were recovered, which, by the way, his lawyer signed off on. So good job on his lawyer. Christina Bobb, shouts out to her. Okay? It does not fucking matter if the rest of it are like, McDonald's menus from that time when he served McDonald's. Once you have top level security clearance, classified information that has been retrieved, that's it. And they knew that that was there. That's how they signed off on the fucking search warrant, okay, by a Republican judge, okay? And that's it. It's done. So everything else you talk about is fucking silly. It's stupid, okay? Yeah, you could have jaywalked after you committed a murder, but ultimately you're being tried for murder, okay? When they bust your door down and arrest you for murder, you can't turn around and be like, well, I was, they're arresting me for jaywalking. No, they're not. They're arresting you for murder, okay? They're investigating you for murder. Not the jaywalking that matters.
And all of this precedes one of the subsections that Andy McCarthy correctly says is really elastic. This permits the seizure of any government and or presidential records created throughout the 4 years of Trump's presidency. This has nothing to do with classified information. It's mainly designed to use the criminal law, the search warrant, to enforce the Presidential Records Act, which, again, as I say, is not a criminal statute. The National Archives, Presidential Records Act stuff, that is not criminal statute. So maybe they can get away with this sort of search warrant, but to pretend that this is a very specific, targeted, laser-like approach to finding specific documents that are a national security threat, that is not what this looks like in any way, shape, or form. It is far broader than that, and that raises serious political questions.
But you don't have political questions. You're making political answers right now. You're making it seem like they had no reason to do this, while at the end offering minor concessions to like, well, it is within their legal purview to do this. This was 9 minutes of Ben Shapiro literally saying, they can't do this, they can't do this, only at the end to be like, well, they could technically do this. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for the 9-minute video then.
But it seems like the strategy by the DOJ and the FBI here is basically throw everything against the wall, see what sticks, toss a bunch of lines in the deep sea, hope to come up with a really big fish.
Yeah, what they did. So, yeah, they did. And you recognize that they did. So it doesn't really matter. All right, let's take a look at what LegalEagle had to say.
I'm going to enforce all laws concerning
the
protection of classified information. No one will be above the law.
Oh,
Okay, now we
Lord.
know the crimes that the DOJ thinks former President Trump committed. When the FBI served a search warrant on Donald Trump's Florida club, the reaction was shock and outrage. What records could Trump have that would justify a raid on the ex-president's home? Well, now we know that reports indicate that the FBI was sent to retrieve
Yeah, going back to that fishing analogy. Let's say there's a big pond. Let's say there's a fish that you're trying to get from that big pond. You know that there is a fish in that pond that you are trying to get. Okay? You can go on a fishing expedition knowing full well that where the fucking fish is. That's how you're supposed to retrieve it. You ask nicely and the fish doesn't come out. You have to retrieve it. It doesn't work that way. And especially after the fish has been retrieved, you can't turn around and be like, well, this was a fishing expedition. Okay, well, it was legal, so shut the fuck up.
documents in part related to nuclear weapons. And although we don't know what was in the dozens of boxes removed from Mar-a-Lago, we do know that Jay Bratt was present for the search. Bratt is the FBI's chief of counterintelligence and export control. That probably means that yes, Trump had information related to nuclear weapons or national defense. This is a really big deal because presidents do not have the right to classify or declassify records relating to nuclear information. We'll get into that in a second. And now we have the benefit of the actual warrant
that's the other part too, yeah.
that was served on Trump's estate. So in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the crimes that former President Trump may have violated by taking a U-Haul full of documents to his basement in Palm Beach. But here's what we know so far. On Friday morning, Trump sent messages by Truth Social insisting that the, quote, nuclear weapons issue is a hoax. He also suggested that Barack Hussein Obama had lots of nuclear information that he had used for his library.
Hussein.
He also once again accused the FBI of planting information, and almost at the same time, he claimed that he had a standing order to declassify all information taken out of the White House, which seems to run contrary to his allegation that the FBI planted the information that he seemingly declassified. It has been alleged that Mar-a-Lago does have security cameras, so there is a possibility that the search might have been recorded. Now, meanwhile, Eric Trump did what Trumps do best. He asked people to donate money if they're mad. And now, after a week of speculation, we have the actual search warrant that was served, which is fairly unusual because these things tend to stay sealed. So why was it the case that the court unsealed it? Well, according to the New York Times, the government first tried to convince Trump to simply return the records at issue. When he did not comply, the government served Trump with a subpoena to return the boxes. Trump apparently only partially responded to the subpoena, so the DOJ decided to get a search warrant to get the rest of the records. The Washington Post has reported that the FBI sought, among other items, classified documents related to nuclear weapons. Attorney General Merrick Garland held a press conference on Thursday where he confirmed three things. First, that he approved the warrant in accordance with the memo on political targets. For more information about that memo, which originated with Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr, check out my other video on the Trump search warrant. Now, second, the DOJ filed a motion with the district court to unseal the warrant application and the warrant itself. That made the two documents public, although it did not unseal the probable cause affidavit that gave rise to the warrant itself. And third, the search warrant and the return were left with
LegalEagle is a CIA informant? Wait, I love that. I mean, I don't know if that's even the case or not, but I love the idea that it is, okay?
with Trump's lawyers in accordance with the federal rules of
Oh, he said, I lied, by the way. Thanks.
civil procedure. So now we can examine the unsealed warrant itself. According to the search warrant, the property to be seized included, quote, all physical documents and records constituting evidence, contraband, fruits of crime, or other items illegally possessed in violation of 18 U.S.C. sections 793, 2071, or 1519. So this means that Trump is being investigated under the following statutes. 18 U.S.C. 2071, which prohibits the concealment, removal, or mutilation of information. 18 U.S.C. 793, which prohibits gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information, and 18 U.S.C. 1519, which outlaws the destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations. Trump's lawyers have argued that Trump had a right to declassify all of these records and that he did so before he left office. However, none of the three statutes require that the information be classified in order for it to be a crime, and we'll talk about that wrinkle in a second. Trump's lawyer, Christina Bobb, signed the receipt listing the property that was removed from Mar-a-Lago. The FBI took about 20 boxes of records, photographs, binders, and handwritten notes. The list starts with clemency records related to Roger Stone and, quote, Info Ray, the president of France. They removed 11 sets of classified documents. Some of these were marked top secret and were only allowed to be stored in special government facilities. It also says agents collected 4 sets of top secret documents, 3 sets of secret documents, and 3 sets of confidential documents, allowing the FBI to win their game of federal gin rummy. Now, the list of documents includes records marked various classified TS/SCI documents, and this abbreviation refers to top secret and sensitive compartmented information. Now, sensitive compartmented information is information about certain intelligence sources and methods, and can include information pertaining to sensitive collection systems, analytical processing, and targeting, or things that are derived from it. Now, a person can only have access to SCI if they have a top secret security clearance and if they have a need to know designation. Although the president has access to SCI, that doesn't necessarily mean he has the authority to remove SCI documents and store them in his house after he's no longer.
I want, if they're not going to declassify anything, I want them to, at the very least, declassify the fucking this top secret information pertaining to the French president. Like, what did he get? I want to know. Do we know that? Maybe I don't. Maybe that was declassified. What was it? Like, what could he have taken that has like top secret information about the French president? And also, why? Ball weight? Yeah, I don't know if the American agencies have that information.
Longer president. And since the boxes of records recovered from Mar-a-Lago do seem to relate to national defense, I turned to one of the preeminent national security lawyers in the country, and coincidentally the lawyer who is currently litigating my federal cases regarding John Bolton's memoir and the Inspector General misconduct in the last administration, Kel McClanahan. So Kel, what could it mean if Trump has or withheld national security information?
Well, once national security information is involved, that's a completely different ballgame. And it doesn't even have to be classified information. The Espionage Act, which I'm sure most...
This is why I keep saying it doesn't even fucking matter if he declassified it or not. Whether he declassified it in his brain, whether he actually like declassified it, which he didn't. He definitely didn't declassify it in his brain. You can't do that. That's bullshit. Especially as it pertains to nuclear information. You can't just fucking declassify it. There's a process for declassification, and there's an additional process that you need to go through with the Atomic Commission, or whatever the fuck it's called. But even if you did, let's say, you still can't. You can still be hit with the fucking Espionage Act.
If your viewers are familiar with, doesn't require something to be classified before it heavily penalizes people who take it, who hide it, who destroy it, who keep it in their basement. It just requires that something be called national defense information, which is helpfully defined as information related to the national defense. That extraordinarily broad definition allows people to be prosecuted under the espionage.
Oh my God, he has Trigun. Oh my God, this dude has Trigun behind him. Dude, respect. This guy, I trust him. I respect him. I think he has great legal takes. Okay, that's wild. What the fuck? Respect.
Espionage Act for taking information that is not classified as long as it has something to do with the national defense. And when you have classified information, well, that triggers a different law called 18 U.S.C. 1924, which used to be a misdemeanor that people pled down to for mishandling classified information.
Oh man, it sure would be a shame if it was no longer a misdemeanor.
But President Trump himself...
Oh, that's right. It's because Trump made it a fucking felony. Fuck, that's crazy. That's crazy to think about. Crazier than the misdemeanor of watching the 60-second ad break at the top of the hour, obviously. Which, I lied. It's not even a misdemeanor, but you will get a 60-second ad break at the top of the hour. Now, of course, if you don't want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. Very easy way to avoid that. Subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime, and you will no longer see the top of the hour ad breaks. Okay, I will not forget to run it this time. I will run it on time. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky, but if you're not lucky, make your own luck. Here's the 1 minute ad break now.
Signed a law in 2018 that made it a felony, so that all they have to prove is that there was classified information He did not store it properly. Therefore, he's guilty. It's as close to a strict liability crime as you generally get in the intelligence community.
And so, Kel, there are also reports that the documents could
But wait, maybe in his mind he decided that it was no longer a felony. Guess what? You got wrecked, libtard. That's right. What if he fucking, in his mind, without telling anyone, decided that it was no longer a felony if he did it himself? Yeah, you didn't think about that, did you?
relate to nuclear weapons. If that's true, how does that change things?
Well, the involvement of nuclear weapons information throws a whole new variable into the mix. You see, what we think of as classified information is actually a creation of an executive order. That is, the control of the classification is the exclusive domain of the president.
Thank you, Tyler Spark, for the 5 get the subs.
The president can classify it, the president can declassify. However, nuclear weapons information is one of the few types of information that's controlled by statute, in this case, the Atomic Energy Act. And the statute says that this information cannot be released or disseminated without going through a certain set of steps. And that is not within the exclusive control of the president. Therefore, even if Trump had said that he declassified this information before he took it home with him, that wouldn't be enough. He would have declassified it for the purposes of the executive order, but he would still be bound by the Atomic Energy Act, which carries its own criminal penalties.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Kel. Kel runs the National Security Counselor and does great work, including legal attempts to recover the Secret Service and DHS leadership text messages that were illegally deleted last year that you've no doubt read about in the news. And a tax-deductible donation to the NSC would go a long way since they're handling many cases, including my own pro bono. So there's a link to that down in the description. So that's the information and documents that are at issue in this investigation. But let's look at the actual...
Kel also does look like one of those like fucking defense counsel that would like get rappers out on bail. You know what I mean? He just straight up looks like one of those lawyers.
crimes that are being investigated. The first is 18 U.S.C. 1519, the destruction, alteration, or falsification of records in federal investigations. It states, quote, whoever knowingly alters, destroys, mutilates, conceals, covers up, falsifies, or makes a false entry in any record, document, or tangible object with the intent to impede, obstruct, or influence the investigation or proper administration of any matter within the jurisdiction of any department or agency of the United States.
Tyler Spark, thank you for the 7. Give this up.
Shall be fined under this title, imprisoned not more than 20 years, or both. So in other words, to convict a defendant of obstruction under Section 1519, the government has to prove each of the following elements. First, that the defendant knowingly altered, destroyed, concealed, or falsified a record, document, or tangible object. And second, the defendant acted with the intent to impede, obstruct, or influence an actual or contemplated investigation of a matter within the jurisdiction of an agency of the United States. Now, the government doesn't have to prove the defendant's sole or even primary intention was to obstruct justice, as long as the government proves beyond a reasonable doubt that one of the defendant's intentions was to obstruct justice. But that takes us to 8 U.S.C. 2071, which prohibits the willful concealment, destruction, or removal of federal documents. To establish a violation of this provision, the government must prove 1, an individual concealed, removed, or destroyed a record, or attempted to do so, or took and carried away a record with the intent to do so. The record was filed or deposited in a public office of the United States, and the individual acted willfully and unlawfully. Now, note that this is a specific intent crime that requires a person to have had an intention to destroy or remove the records in violation of these laws. And as often the case with these specific intent crimes, Trump might be able to argue that he didn't know he wasn't allowed to remove the documents or destroy them, although there's certainly evidence that he was repeatedly told he was violating the law with the way that he handled records. The Washington Post reported that 2 of Trump's former chiefs of staff, Reince Priebus and John Kelly, and former White House counsel Don McGahn, warned him about the Presidential Records Act. When it comes to a potential violation of 18 U.S.C. 2071, there is an additional wrinkle because that section ostensibly prohibits someone from running from office. Now, I take a deep dive into that language, the case law, and the potential repercussions for former President Trump in a video that's exclusive to Nebula that I'll talk about in a little while. That takes us to 18 U.S.C. 793, which concerns the gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information. Section 793 is known as the Espionage Act, which covers the unlawful retention of defense-related information, which could harm the United States or an ally. Now, the Espionage Act is a bit of a misnomer. It's not really, or most of it is not about espionage. It's really about state secrets. Now, Section 793D makes it a crime for anyone, quote, lawfully having possession of, access to, control over, or being entrusted with any of a range of tangible items or information relating to the national defense, which information the possessor has reason to believe could be used to the injury of the United States or to the advantage of any foreign nation, willfully communicates, delivers, transmits, or causes or attempts the same to any person not entitled to receive it, or willfully retains the same and fails to deliver it on demand to the officer or employee of the United States entitled to receive it. In other words, it's a crime to leak national security information. Section 793F makes it a crime for government officials who have lawful possession of such materials to remove them or disclose them to third parties who are unauthorized to receive them. To be guilty of this offense, the person has to have disclosed the information due to their own gross negligence or because of their failure to report the information lost or stolen. But the Espionage Act is not limited to just those people who wrongfully disclose national defense information. Section 793E also says it applies to anyone who knowingly disseminates, distributes, or even retains national defense information without immediately returning the material to the government officer authorized to possess it. In other words, the text of the act draws no distinction between the leaker, the recipient of the link, or the 100th person to redistribute, retransmit, or even retain the national defense information that, by that point, is already in the public domain. So basically, the entire staff of Mar-a-Lago should probably lawyer up at this point. And if the person who is charged under the act knows or has reason to believe that the information in their possession relates to the national defense and could be used to injure the United States or benefit a foreign power, that person is violating the act's plain language regardless of their specific intent. So that means that almost anyone in the chain could be prosecuted under this section. The leaker, who in this case would be the ex-president, his son, son-in-law, a journalist, or even one of Trump's lawyers. Now, there is one crime that isn't mentioned in the search warrant, and that is a violation of the Presidential Records Act. And there's a very good reason for why the PRA is not mentioned in the search warrant. So let's talk about a president and former president's responsibility under the PRA. Section 2203 of the Act gives the president the responsibility of identifying, preserving records during the administration and requires the president to take all such steps as may be necessary to preserve presidential records. However, a president may also destroy records that the president decides, quote, no longer have administrative, historical, informational, or evidentiary value. Before destroying records, the president must ask the archivist for their opinion. Although the archivist can give an opinion, the person can't stop the president from making their own call. And if the archivist does not sign off on the president's determination, congressional subcommittees are notified, but it's unclear what Congress can actually do during such a dispute. The statute is murky and vague, which brings up the most important point about the PRA. It lacks a real enforcement mechanism. Although a president is not supposed to rip up records, shred them, or flush them down the toilet, the PRA is at most a statement of best practices like an honor system. This was illustrated early in Trump's tenure when Crew challenged Trump's record-keeping practices by suing him under the PRA. Crew alleged that Trump deleted tweets in violation of the PRA, and that the White House use of encrypted and auto-deleting messages hindered the ability of federal agencies to perform their duties. The lawsuit sought a court order compelling the president to stop auto-deleting messages and preserve them under the PRA. But the DC Circuit dismissed Crew's lawsuit, interpreting the president's record-keeping duties narrowly. The court held that mandamus relief was only available under extraordinary circumstances, and that a president's record-keeping duties under the PRA are too discretionary to be enforced by court order. Although courts can review the classification of existing records, a court can't stop the president from acting. In other words, the court held it could not tell the president to create and preserve particular records. However, courts have been willing to enforce some modest limits on what White House officials can do with records that have already been created. Crew successfully sued Dick Cheney for failure to classify some documents as presidential records. A district court also invalidated an agreement between President H.W. Bush and the National Archives that would have conferred complete control of presidential records on the president after he left office. Although citizens don't have a right to enforce the PRA, the Department of Justice arguably does have a mandate to enforce the PRA in some circumstances. Crew and in the National Security Archive wrote to FBI Director Chris Wray and AG Merrick Garland and requested that they investigate whether former President Trump violated criminal laws by willfully destroying and mutilating his presidential records while in office. The National Archives also requested that the Department of Justice undertake an investigation. But there are a number of criminal statutes that make removal and destruction of federal property a crime. It is generally illegal to remove property from the White House. For example, in 2001, Bill Clinton staffers removed the W key from West Wing keyboards right before George W. Bush was inaugurated. This prank was actually theft, and the General Accounting Office interviewed over 100 government employees about the theft of the Ws. So, if the government decides to charge Trump with crimes related to these documents, what are Trump's defenses here? Well, the first would probably be declassification. Trump's lawyers say that he had declassified the documents at issue. Now, presidents do have broad plenary power to classify and declassify documents.
Yeah, now you can't watch Aiden Ross, chatter. You're right. How was George W. Bush going to watch Aiden Ross when the W's taken away from him? Well, I guess Aiden lost. Let's be real. All you need to spam is L's for the most part.
That power stems from their position as commander-in-chief. The president can delegate this authority, they can exercise it themselves, or they can order the release of classified documents after a certain period of time. And as far as we know, Barack Obama was the last president to issue an order on classified information. Under Obama's Executive Order 13526, original classification authorities, like the heads of various departments and agencies, were allowed to classify and declassify information owned by their organizations. That means that departments might authorize the disclosure of information to someone with the proper security clearance. And this executive order has not been rescinded, and federal agencies are still following it. However, future and following presidents like Trump and Biden are under no obligation to follow Obama's executive order. They can tweak the order, issue their own, or simply handle things in an ad hoc manner. And Trump's approach to classified information could probably be described as freewheeling. And after Trump lost the 2020 election, Donald Trump Jr. tweeted that his dad should, quote, declassify everything. We can't let the bad actors get away with it. Could Trump have declassified everything?
I think deep in your heart, you already know the answer to that.
Well, technically, yes, the president does have the power to declassify every document that the US government holds, but then that information would be public and you could FOIA that information and release it. And Trump's defenders in Congress
Coward. Should have done it.
held a press conference to explain that not everything that is classified is totally classified. And in some ways, what they're saying actually does make sense. The government tends to overclassify records, and arguably, a lot more information should be available to the public. Transparency in government is generally a good thing. But in this case, we may be talking about some extremely sensitive top secret information, information that may relate to nuclear weapons. And this gets us to one of the main exceptions about the president's declassification powers, which is that the president doesn't fully control information about nuclear weapons. The Atomic Energy Act regulates information about nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. Under the act, restricted data and formally restricted data are top secret information.
Thank you for the raid, Chapo. Hope you had a good stream.
And the Act defines restricted data as all data concerning the design, manufacture, or utilization of atomic weapons, the production of special nuclear material, and the use of special nuclear material in the production of energy. Now, nuclear information is placed in the formally restricted data category after the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense jointly determine that it relates primarily to the military utilization of atomic weapons. Now, the president also lacks control over information related to U.S. and foreign intelligence operations. The Intelligence Identities Protection Act protects the identity of covert U.S. intelligence operatives. Their identities and other intelligence sources are protected by statute, and the president cannot reveal them without breaking federal law. And there's also another exception to the president's declassification power, which should be completely obvious. Former presidents don't have the legal authority to declassify records after they leave office. But at base, as noted earlier, declassifying the documents is only one of the hurdles, since a lot of the statutes at issue here do not turn on whether the information is classified. That's completely unrelated. We also don't know if Trump followed the procedure for declassifying the documents. He can't just think declassification in his head while president and the documents
how dare
are
you say that?
declassified.
Wait, that's not what Ben Shapiro told me.
The lawyers at Just Security summarize the process for declassification like this. Classified documents have classification markings in the header and footer of each page, indicating the level of classification for the document as a whole. Furthermore, classified records have cover sheets that specifically indicate when the record was classified by whom and under what authority, as well as when the classification expires.
It's a hotly debated topic, actually. So yeah, no, it's not. No, it's not. No. That's literally not. Does not.
If Trump did in fact order the declassification, he still needed to make sure his staff took the necessary next steps to modify the classification markings on the documents before he could actually handle and store the records as a private citizen, as if they were unclassified. Under security classification rules, a classification marking on a document has to be treated as valid and binding unless and until a subsequent marking replaces it. Appropriate government staffers would have needed to cross out the classification markings in the headers and footers and stamped declassified on the record, noting when it was declassified, by whom, and under what authority. Since that does not appear to have been done with the classified documents reportedly identified to date, the documents remain classified and had to be treated as classified for handling and storage purposes. It's probably worth noting that ignorance is not going to be a defense here, because reportedly the FBI and DOJ met with Trump several times, issued a subpoena, and not all of the documents were given back. And even the fact that some of the documents were given back initially shows that they know how to handle classified documents and agreed that some of these documents needed to be returned to the government. That being said, Trump might have a First Amendment defense. The Supreme Court does recognize that in some cases, the public's interest in receiving information can outweigh the government's interest in keeping it secret. However, when evaluating First Amendment concerns, the court gives more leeway to reporters who lawfully obtain government documents than they do to government officials. And when you're talking about classified and defense information or information related to nuclear documents, security interests are probably going to outweigh those First Amendment concerns. So will this be the thing that brings down the
No. While the federal government and our courts are notoriously awful and draconian when it comes to whistleblowers and their treatment, as it pertains to matters of national security, which can be anything and everything, the reality is that when we're talking about someone like Donald Trump, those very same courts will most likely defend him. Let's be real, okay? The court system is designed. I mean, they appointed this guy. So, I mean, they appointed half the fucking lawyers or half the judges, so, and the justices. So,
former president? It's hard to say. But a lot of people have noticed that a violation of Section 2071 can carry with it a penalty of being barred from office. Could that be used to prevent Trump from running again? Well, I have an entire separate video over on Nebula, exclusive to Nebula, which is today's sponsor along with CuriosityStream. Because on Nebula, my videos always come out early with 0 ads. And I release exclusive content like this all the time, like this entire video on whether Trump can be barred.
okay, that was a good video overall. Let's talk briefly about Liz Cheney.
But we're going to begin.
We are, wait, hold on. Before we talk about Liz Cheney, sorry. The Florida judge weighed in on unsealing the affidavit. And then we'll talk about Liz Cheney.
Out of the battle,
and we'll mourn Liz Cheney's electoral loss last
over
night.
the affidavit leading to the FBI search of former President Donald Trump's Florida estate. The Justice Department opposes unsealing it, while Trump is calling for its release. And now we are learning the judge in the case could weigh in as soon as this week. Our senior national correspondent Terry Moran is in Washington, D.C. with all of those details. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Amy. All eyes are going to be on that courtroom in West Palm Beach, where on Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m., Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhardt is going to hold a hearing. He's the same judge who approved the search warrant for former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. And this hearing is going to center on the question of whether the affidavit that federal investigators used to justify that search should be made public. Donald Trump is calling for it to be unsealed, and a group of media organizations, including ABC News, is also asking the judge to do that. But the Justice Department strongly opposes unsealing this sworn affidavit. In a court filing, department lawyers arguing that unsealing the affidavit could, quote, cause significant and irreparable harm.
I feel like when you're watching someone else's content, you should at least show their promo code from their ad read. I'm not saying just listen to the whole read, but fast forward to the part where you can get them paid. Well, we already did that earlier when he talked about Nebula. But thank you. I sense a new hotly debated topic incoming. I will assume that this will now be the next step in the Hassan steals content and doesn't give anything back saga. I know that a lot of you weirdos, well, not you weirdos in here, well, some of you weirdos are in here, tried to do the whole, like, Hassan is not doing the right thing with his producer on his podcast.
Harm to the investigation, chill future cooperation by witnesses, and put highly classified.
Sometimes, okay, what is the issue? Dude, look, they're doing it. There is no issue. I have no issue with showing the promo code so they can get paid. I have no issue with it. I usually show it. I usually skip to the end part where they mention the promo code. You're doing it. You're doing it right now. You're creating, long-term community members are creating an issue out of something that is literally not an issue. And you're doing it selfishly. You're doing it. Stop. Stop it. And the problem is, well, the problem in this circumstance is I have a lot of mentally ill long-term community subscribers that feel as though they have this unfettered sense of justice. And because they can't use that on structural things, because they can't like actually make any sort of impact or change on structural issues, they turn around and hyper-focus, like they laser beam on things that they feel are minor inconveniences, but they're not actually minor inconveniences. They are massive issues. And once they get on that fucking slant, they will personally overlook the things that they're asking me to do that I am already doing. You're doing it right now. Please don't do this. Okay.
Classified materials at risk of exposure. The department will go into this hearing in a strong position. Courts routinely defer to the government on its claims and concerns about classified material, and these kinds of affidavits are often sealed in order to protect the integrity of an investigation. Amy?
And Terry, we understand the FBI has already interviewed top White House lawyers about the missing documents, yes?
That's right. This shows how deep this investigation is going. ABC News has learned that former White House counsel Pat Cipollone and his deputy Patrick Philbin have been interviewed by the FBI in this investigation into the handling of documents at Mar-a-Lago. They are the most senior former administration officials known to have cooperated and talked to the FBI. It just shows that this is an aggressive, fast-moving investigation. Amy?
It certainly is. Terry Moran in Washington for us. Thank you.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks.
I think that the affidavit features some information that pertain to what kind of documents were classified. And I think on top of that, yes, I'm cutting Robert Robbins' promo, sorry. But also the like actual names, I think, like of all the people that are involved in it. Wow, dude, you're not going to let GMA get their shit off? Yeah, I know. Fucked up. I'm a fucked guy like that. I'm a bad guy. Okay.